Well, thanks for inviting me. Before we start, a few words about myself, because people often get up here and say I've worked for 25 years in payments, and I've not worked 25 years in payments. I began life as an economist. I then moved into industry, ended up responsible for selling Marlboro cigarettes in Luxembourg. We sold 1 billion cigarettes a year in Luxembourg. It was a very good market for us. Moved to BT, did a lot of B2B strategy, propositions development, and marketing work. Ended up in charge of strategy, marketing and products for a division called BT Expedite, which provided point-of-sale software, merchandising software, loyalty, customer relationship management and e-commerce platforms to high street retailers. We provided all the technology for Primark, for example, in all their stores around Europe, which got me into the payment industry because in order to provide the technology Primark needs to make its stores work, it's got to provide a payment service to its customers so they can spend the money. And it struck me as an odd industry because for us, as an integrator, it was just cost and annoyance. But clearly it was a big sector on its own. So when WorldPay gave me a call and said, come and join, it sounded interesting. WorldPay developed WorldPay Total, which was the first integrated payment offering they had, looked a lot at loyalty as well. Since then, I've consulted on product strategy and go-to-market with First Data, with SagePay, with MyEuro, with SlimPay, and the last couple of years doing some of the same jobs for Evo, Evo Payments International, where they call me head of proposition, but it's a kind of mixture of product strategy and business strategy and go-to-market and just fix stuff because we're in a hurry, because as you'll see in a moment, Evo is in a hurry. Evo is one of the largest American companies you've never heard of. I'll talk a bit about Evo in a second, but first I have a question for you all. Can anybody tell me what this number is? $82 million between June and September 2017. If you can't, don't worry, I will come back to this later on, but it's a big number. So, Evo is a merchant acquirer. We process about $100 billion of payments a year in almost 500,000 points of sale around the world. I mentioned it's one of these big companies you've probably never heard of. About 2,000 staff, and we sell primarily through partnerships. So generally, we don't use our own brand, which is one reason why you won't have heard of us too much. In America we do, but outside, as I'll come on to in a second, it's mainly through bank partnerships. Outside of the US, we're big in Poland. We're quite big in Mexico. We're quite big in Spain as well. Also operations in Czech, in Ireland, in Germany, and in the UK. This is a buy and build strategy. So my challenge is primarily to try and make all the sums of the parts equal greater than the whole. The bank partnerships are important to us. As you'll see at the bottom, we've got a great many. Primarily PKO in Poland, Raiffeisen in Czech and Poland, Citibank in Mexico, Popular Payments, which is now owned by Santander in Spain, Bank of Ireland in Ireland, Deutsche Bank throughout Europe, but primarily in Germany, Postbank also in Germany. In the UK, we don't have any bank partnerships. We work with ISO partners, particularly HandyPay, which has been a great relationship for Evo and for HandyPay, which we took over from WorldPay a couple of years ago. And we've recently launched a brand with the AA called AA Card Pay, again, targeting the UK market. We've got one or two other things going with ISOs in Cyprus and a few payment facilitators in Italy. So it's a very broad spread across Europe. And if you know any banks that are looking for new partners, give us a call because we're always interested. So what's our growth strategy? Well, our growth strategy is to get into new geographies through new partnerships, new customers in the markets we're already in, through extending our partnerships and getting extra ones in each market we're in, because only in Poland are we number one. An increasing share of wallet, primarily integrated payments, and e-commerce being the two areas where we're moving forward from being a pure acquirer into managing the technology that customers use in order to generate transactions. And with a single set of APIs to get all our customers and partners into a standard set of boarding, processing and customer service tools that we can use in each market. And that provides a common platform that allows us to add new partnerships quickly, but also to generate the economies of scale we need to build the business cases for innovation. Because each of the units on their own in our individual markets would not be large enough to be a scale business. So we've got to bring them together and then we can deliver innovation to many thousands of points of sale and many thousands of websites at the same time. and then deliver modern sales and marketing on top of that in each individual country. Because the observation we had taking over the ownership of businesses that were previously parts of banks was that the sales and marketing was somewhat old-fashioned. And we can do that much better by adopting some best practice techniques. We've still got a long way to go, but we've gone from being bad to being okay, and I think we can get to be great later on this year. If we get that right, what does that mean? That means that if you shop with us as a customer in Ireland or in Spain or in the Czech Republic, it'll look different when you go to the website, but actually the product you're buying is the same product. And we get the economies of scale. So we get the advantage of being global and being local if we get it right. Now, that's enough about Evo. I'll go back to my question, because this is the key challenge I face and we face in Europe. $82 million is what Square spent on product development in the last quarter. $82 million on product development and $67 million on sales and marketing in one quarter alone in the US. When that comes to Europe, that's going to be a major challenge for everybody in this room. Why is that going to be a major challenge? Well, I want to quote some business school theory as well, because why not? I'm on stage. Peter Drucker, the purpose of a business is to create a customer. That's why we're here. There's no other purpose of being a business but to start with nothing, and then you've got a customer. And how do you get customers? You spend money on two things. You spend money on innovation, on getting new products to market, and then you spend money on marketing so that potential customers know that they're there. And that's what Square is doing, spending big on marketing, spending big on innovation. Which leaves me with some questions for the European merchant acquiring industry. First one being, what's the role of brands? What is a brand? Brand's a promise. If you've got a good brand, a great brand, what does that mean? It means that customers will look to you first for something new. It means they'll forgive you when you screw up on customer service. And it means that you can charge between 10 and 15% more than your competitors if you get your brand right. My contention is in Europe, most merchant acquirers don't really have a brand because they regard themselves still as being agents of card schemes rather than businesses with relationships with customers that deliver value. And B2B branding has changed significantly over the last few years. It's gone from being very dull to being quite exciting and interesting. Look at these new B2B brands, Salesforce, Xero, MailChimp, Dropbox. These are all brands that our customers use. When they're not buying acquiring services, they're buying email marketing services, they're buying financial services, they're buying CRM systems, they want to store data in the cloud. These businesses all operate a very different sales and marketing model, a different commercial model, because they rely on inbound marketing and they rely on stimulating demand. And they're a much more engaging proposition for customers. What that means is they tend not to hire salespeople to talk to customers. You can be a customer of all these brands and you probably haven't spoken to anybody. Even customer service is done on email. So it's all done automatically, and that scales, that delivers extremely high economies of scale and very high gross margins. This is what our customers are doing when they're not talking about payments. So our brands have got to move. Our brands have got to move from being today, being these technical, functional, remote, and very undifferentiated propositions. If you go to the websites of most merchant acquirers, they say the same things as each other. In fact, they say the same things as most of the PSPs as well, and most of the gateways, and a lot of anti-fraud tools as well. One of the great confusions people who don't work in the industry have is they've really struggled to distinguish bits of the value chain because we all say exactly the same things on our websites. We've got to move. We've got to be helpful. Like MailChimp, like Dropbox, we've got to help our customers and solve their problems. We've got to be fast because businesses are used to buying services at the touch of a button and having them delivered. Clearly, we've got to innovate, and we've got to be distinct from each other as well. So I can say why my brand is different to the brand of my competitors. But if that doesn't convince you, let me give you another example. Why is brand important? Because in the new world, this is how customers are buying. This is the new business buying behavior. This is simplified commerce. This is a gateway provided by MasterCard. If you buy that e-commerce gateway, you get two payment options. Which one are you going to choose? You've got how long are you going to spend deciding which one to click? Probably 10 seconds, 15 seconds. You're going to click on the one you know. Fortunately for us, we've done the A/B testing. It's mainly the one on the right. People normally click on Evo. This is good news. But that's why brand is becoming ever more essential in payments, because people are going to make decisions on which one they're going to buy, not because they've got a salesman in front of them, but because they're online and they're going to click a button and they're going to click a button immediately. So how do we balance sales and marketing in this new world? Because this is an industry that's very used to spending money on sales, an industry that's not very happy normally spending money on marketing. In fact, it's the same thing. Sales and marketing today and business to business are the same thing. They're the same people. It's the same process. Because we have to be able to drive inbound. We have to drive customers to our websites to buy stuff from us straight through processing with no human intervention. This is from our Spanish business, Universal Payments. Also indicates our ethical pricing policy. We have no hidden fees, we have no authorization fees, no premium transaction charges, no charges for statements. We just charge you for what you buy. So you can have 1,000 euros a month of payments for €9.99 on a special offer. But you can buy straight through on the website. Now, it's easy for us to construct that. It's easy for us to construct a straight-through processing application to terminal being delivered proposition. However, what we've got to get good at is understanding how to market this, so actually the right kind of customers come on the website and buy. That's a challenge for this industry as a whole, because a lot of us don't quite know yet what the right kind of customers are, what their buying behaviour is, and how we find them. So next question. How does this industry manage the move from payments being a discrete business process on its own world, to actually one that's firmly embedded in everybody else's ecosystem? It's very easy if 10 years ago you just sent someone a payment terminal and it dialed the cloud, dialed your authorization server. That's a discrete world on its own. Well, increasingly, payments is part of everybody else's business, and it's got to be integrated easily into that. Now, we know that. What we have to do is, as well as doing the APIs, which I think everybody in this room probably is doing, we've got to start inhabiting the world the rest of this ecosystem lives in. So we've got to stop going to payment conferences and start going to retail software conferences and e-commerce conferences and ERP systems conferences and CRM system conferences and every other kind of software which is part of this new ecosystem that we're involved with. Because we're confronted with three ways of orchestrating the ecosystem, and to do each of these three, we've got to spend a lot of time with the other members of the ecosystem, with the other software vendors. I put it acquirer alongside, acquirer inside, acquirer leading. On the left, a very typical sales and marketing model. BackNet is the leading manufacturer of software for bakeries in Germany. Germany is quite exciting in payments at the moment because it's going contactless at last. And bakeries are a great place to make a contactless payment because it's a low-value transaction with a queue. They make the software. If you buy their software, you've got a special offer with Evo, so you can have an integrated payment terminal with your bakery software. Very conventional sales model. But increasingly in the new world, you've got what I call the acquirer inside. This is Shopify. This is the leading brand of shopping carts. Most businesses now, when they start online, will buy Shopify. And they're confronted no longer with a list of payment gateways they can use, but they're Shopify trying to market their own payment service, which has got Stripe inside, and Stripe has got another acquirer inside that. So it's kind of Russian dolls. That's a very scary place for an acquirer to be, because you're inside two other businesses, and you're such a long way from the customer that you can't have any intimacy, and you can't have a relationship, and you can't really have much stickiness. But if you get scale, there's money to be made. And then the third model is what I call acquirer leading, where the acquirer tries to orchestrate this bundle of an ecosystem. It's very expensive to put together, it's very hard to sell, but if you get it right, the world could be yours. This is what First Data are still pushing on with Clover. It's a high risk strategy, but it could pay off. But there's three models, and you've got to choose one or the other. So are these software vendors the new ISOs? In America, this seems to be very much a trend. We're seeing the American acquiring industry moving from backing ISOs to backing software vendors. The software vendors know this and understand they can get quite generous commissions. The European software industry maybe isn't quite there yet. My suspicion is it's a bit of both. I think that the software vendors will start selling payments, as Shopify did in that last example. Why wouldn't they? But equally, as we just saw with Jim's last presentation, I think a lot of ISOs are going to become essentially software vendors and application service providers and so on, where they're providing a much bigger service to their customers, of which payments is one single element. Maybe it's the anchor. But the ISV ISO thing is going to be interesting in Europe over the next few years. We've hired these guys to help our ISV partners. You might see them on LinkedIn. We've done some advertising recently. But if you give us a call, these guys will help you out. So what role do products play? Because once we've established the role we want to be an ecosystem, what are our products and what role do they play? And let me go back and do a little bit of the theory as well. So if you look at all the products in a portfolio that contribute to the customer relationship, and the customer relationship is the sole driver of profitability, you've got magnet products that attract customers to your brand, you've got anchor products that keep them, you've got the profit engine that makes the money, and you've got the spice that brings some excitement. So think of a Volkswagen Golf 3 litre that goes to 150 miles an hour in 3 seconds. Like, nobody buys that car, but everybody who drives a 1.6 Golf feels much better about themselves because this other car exists. And that's the role of spice in your portfolio. Well, today, if you're a merchant acquirer or do merchant services, I suspect probably e-commerce is the magnet, because that's the product that's getting the phones ringing, that people want to move online, they need help, they give you a call. The anchor is probably a fairly long-term terminal rental contract and an integration into commerce systems. That's quite hard to shift. The money still comes from the merchant account. The money still comes from financial services. That's actually what generates the profit. And the spice, or possibly new payment types. But in the new world, I think that portfolio probably changes a little bit. I think the magnet that's going to attract customers to a payment brand is going to be the ecosystem, because they're going to start with, I bought some software, what payment systems work in my software? That's what's going to attract you, because you're going to buy an ERP system, you're going to buy a web shop, and it's going to pop up and say, these are the 2 or 3 payment options we've got. What keeps the customers? Probably the ecosystem as well, and integration into commerce platforms. I don't see anything that's changing the merchant account being the profit engine, which is a bit of concern from this morning. I can see that the move to ACH payments in Europe could certainly become a magnet product for us, because it'll get the phones ringing. I'm struggling to see how we make as much money out of that as we do out of processing Visa and MasterCards. The final question then is, are we in financial services or are we in technology? And that's important because it sets the whole direction for the way our businesses run. If you're in financial services, it's about managing risk, and it's about being paid reasonably for managing that risk. And it's what we've done for years. The technology brands have a very different viewpoint. They regard themselves as managing customer relationships, delighting customers, and bringing new products and services behind that brand that their customers value. And it's a good thought experiment, but for your brand, with your customers, what else do they spend money on, and what else would they buy from your brand? Because it doesn't have to be anything that's related to a transaction. If your brand is trusted for security, maybe there's other security things you could sell. If it's a brand that's helpful or innovative, or a brand that's associated with international expansion, or a brand that's associated with fun, or whatever, there's other things we can do behind that brand. Salesforce.com, I think, are a great example. So there are 3 strategic options, I think, for acquirers in Europe. You can go down the customer intimacy route and create a brand that really understands its customers and delivers the value that the customers need. That's the kind of square Izettle option. You can go for scale, and Bain Capital believe there's room for 3 acquirer processes in Europe, only 3, long term when the consolidation's finished, and they'll primarily be the suppliers to the people on the left. Or you can go through a vertical focus and go niche, which is a very viable strategy as well, either niche geography like an ISO might do, or a niche in some particular vertical or business process. Whatever, we've got to compete with that, and if we've got to compete with that, we're going to have to move quite quickly, I suspect. Thank you.